What's going on, you guys, and welcome to the channel. Hope everybody's having a freaking awesome day. If you're new to the channel, thank you so much for checking me out. Today we're going to be taking a look at another retro PC. Honestly, I'm not entirely sure what the specs are on this thing, but what I do know is that it is in a old school case. This thing, it looks old, but it looks cool. I can't wait to dig into this thing. This is the last episode of the 4PC donations that I had received from a gentleman probably about 2 weeks ago at this point. We're going to tear into this thing. We're going to see what the heck is inside it, see if it posts, check out the specs, and see what exactly it is that we're dealing with. Before we get into the video, as per usual, I want to thank all my old and new subscribers. You guys are awesome. Again, the growth on this channel is incredible. It is so much more than I thought that I was going to get. I'm at a point right now that I didn't think I was going to reach for at least 6 months. As of right now, we're just under 300 subscribers, you guys. My last video that I did, we were under 200 subscribers. So to all of you that helped push this channel to a new height, freaking thank you. To all my donators, thank you. I will be using that money to hopefully get a new camera here in the near future so that I can bring you guys better, more detailed quality content, which is what I long to do. I love doing this. I love seeing the results, and I could not be more grateful. With that being said, we're gonna go ahead, get into it, see what we're dealing with, get this thing hooked up, tested, and see what kind of games it can run. Of course, before we do that, we will do a walk around so that you guys can get an idea of what we are dealing with here. So, stay with me, you guys. Alright, you guys, here is what we are dealing with. This thing is absolutely freaking massive. It is huge. This thing probably weighs a good 30, maybe 40 pounds. But damn, does it look great. This thing looks so cool. A couple things that I am noting is that there was obviously some stickers on here. A couple on the back side that somebody tried to peel off at some point, but they left the residue. And it looks very bad. So we will definitely be giving this thing a nice good clean. Aside from that, this thing looks absolutely fantastic. I cannot wait to hook this thing up and see what it is that we are dealing with here. This case, this is so my style. I love these older style cases. So, as per usual, you guys, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get you all set up, and we're going to dig into this thing. Obviously, before we do that, we're going to hook it up, see if it works, and then we will go from there. So, before we get this thing hooked up, I made an observation here that we unfortunately do not have a graphics card. So we're going to go ahead and just hook it up to the motherboard, see if the CPU has any type of video out, and see if this thing will actually post. Okay, so we got this beast all nice and hooked up. We're going to go ahead and power this thing on and see if it works. I think this is the power button. Yeah, that's the power button. Okay. So it does light up a super pretty blue. I like that. That looks beautiful. One thing I'm noticing through this screen is that motherboard does not look normal. That is a very elongated motherboard, so we're definitely going to be checking that out. But right off the bat, we have a boot, you guys. So let's go ahead and see if I can get a keyboard and mouse hooked up to this thing, get into the BIOS, and see what kind of CPU we're working with here and how much RAM. One thing that I am noticing is that there is not a lot of rear I/O going on here. Options are very, very limited, but not a big deal. We are going to get into the BIOS and try and see what we're dealing with, you guys. Okay, so we are in the BIOS. Looks like we are dealing with a Zotac motherboard. We have an Intel i5-7400, and we are dealing with 16 gigs of RAM. So Looks like it's set at 2400 right now. Not sure if we're going to be able to change that or not. It depends on what this board is capable of, but odds are we're going to end up staying at the 2400 megahertz. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing disconnected, unhooked, get it laid down on the operating table, and get this thing apart, see what the thermal paste looks like, give it a good clean, and then test some games on it. Alright everybody, so we have her laid down on the operating table. We are going to go ahead and pop this front panel off and see what exactly we got going on in here. Alright, let's see what we got going on. Alright, so this front panel does not want to come off too easily. Oh, she wants to hide all her secrets. Okay, so obviously the fans are there's fans connected to the side panel here, so it doesn't want to come off entirely. Alright, so we got the panel off. Let's see if I can get these fans unhooked. Alright, so it's looking like I'm going to have to pull these fans out. Kind of an awkward position to be in, but we'll go ahead and get these fans pulled off of here so I can actually separate the side panel here. Alright, so we have our side panel disconnected from the actual chassis itself. We have both of our 120mm fans sitting here. One of the things that I'm noticing is that there is an extreme lack of dust in here. This thing is incredibly clean. Super clean. So again, these systems supposedly sat outside for many, many years. So I'm not really sure why this thing looks absolutely gorgeous on the inside. Aside from the cleanliness, this board is not typical. This board looks like a mining board for Bitcoin. This does not look like your standard gaming motherboard. In fact, I'm almost 110% sure that this is a mining board for a mining rig. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to get the rest of this taken apart, and I'm going to have to look this up to see what exactly this is, because this is not any motherboard that I have ever seen before, other than what's used in mining rigs. So the RAM modules definitely look brand spanking new, by King Bank. Never heard of them, but it's two 8 gig sticks. These do run at 3200 megahertz, and they look phenomenal. So we will move on to the rest of the disassembly here. Alright, so it looks like we got all of our screws out. Let's go ahead and just gently pull this thing on out of here. So it's looking like the CPU cooler fan is kind of stuck in here. So we'll just go ahead and pull this fan off real quick. Alright. Alright, so this is what we're dealing with, you guys. This is definitely some kind of like Bitcoin mining rig setup. I've never seen one of these used in a gaming PC. So this is definitely a first for me. But definitely very, very cool. I would love to see if this thing can run some games. This is absolutely a unique build. Whoever did this Either they didn't know or they wanted to be able to game and mine at the same time. So we're going to go ahead, set this thing off to the side, and see what else we got going on inside this case. Alright, so it's looking like a lot of these fans, when they did the cable management, are zip tied to the back side here. So we're going to go ahead and flip this thing over and see if we can get these fans to come out. So before we go ahead and flip this thing over, this is what we're dealing with, everyone. This thing is absolutely spotless on the inside. This power supply is by Airs Gaming. Looks like it's a 500 watt. It has an 80 plus bronze rating. Could be better, could be worse, but this looks new. In fact, a lot of this stuff looks new. So I'm very confused as to how this thing supposedly sat outside for so long. It does appear that this is an NZXT case. It does have a CD drive and plenty of room for multiple hard drives. This thing is beefy. This is an absolutely phenomenal case. In terms of airflow, maybe not so much, but design and how it looks, absolutely appealing to me. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing flipped over and see what kind of cable management we have on the other side. Probably going to have to undo all of it and then get these fans out and then go from there. Alright, so we have this thing flipped on its side, and unfortunately there is some scratching going on back here. As previously stated, there is the goo crap that's going on over here. I see USMC, or United States Marine Corps, and Semper Fi. And then another one that says, once a Marine, always a Marine. Thank you for your service. I'm assuming that whoever owned this before was probably in the military, obviously in the Marine Corps. So much respect to you. With that being said, we're going to go ahead, we're going to get these screws out, and we're going to see what kind of cable management we are dealing with here, you guys. Okay, so in terms of cable management, not bad at all. This actually looks really, really good. There's not a single speck of dust back here. So honestly, I don't see how this thing sat outside for very long. There's a little bit of dust over here, but overall this thing looks absolutely fantastic. This is amazing, to be honest. Looks like we have a few zip ties here and there, some wire ties, so that's going to make it a little bit easier to actually dismantle this thing. So we're going to go ahead, we're going to start with that, get these fans out, get this thing all nice and cleaned out, get it reassembled, and then we're going to go ahead and stick in a graphics card and see what this thing can and cannot do. And I am very curious to see what a mining motherboard can do. But we'll get to the motherboard after we get this thing all nice and cleaned out. So it looks like we do have a control module here for the RGB fans. We will go ahead and disconnect all the fans from this. This is probably what was holding those RGB fans in. Alright, so there is our controller. Go ahead and set this off to the side. Okay, so now that we have everything cut loose, we're going to go ahead and get the power supply out of here. We're going to flip this thing back over and get these fans out of here as well. And then we will move on to the front panel over here and see what we got going on underneath there. Alright everybody, so here is our power supply. And this thing does not have a speck of dust in it. It looks like there's been absolutely no runtime on this thing. This power supply is absolutely gorgeous. There's a few dust bits here and there Looks like maybe some dog hairs here and there, but nothing too crazy. There's a little bit of dust on this side, but go like that, and it's gone. So we will go ahead and set this off to the side and move on to our fans. Alright, so we have this thing flipped back over once again. We are going to go ahead and pull out our fans. So I was tempted to pull out this back fan, but there's not a speck of dust on this thing. So for now, I'm just going to leave it. We're going to go ahead and pull off this front panel and see what it looks like up there. Alright, so here is our front fascia, you guys. Again, with more sticker residue left over right here. We'll go ahead and take some IPA and clean all this off. But for now, let's check out what we got going on up front. Alright, so up front, we don't have a whole lot going on. Obviously, we have our CD drive, and then we have one fan, which I believe might be Corsair. So we do have mixed match fans, but not entirely sure. So I'm gonna say that it looks unbelievably clean on the front as well. So there's not a whole lot going on when it comes to dust and debris in here. There is a little bit on the bottom. I do see some dog hairs. And the gentleman that I did pick these up from, he did have about 5 dogs. He had a lot of animals, but I would definitely suspect that there would be so much more going on inside of here than what I'm currently seeing. This is beautiful. So we're gonna go ahead, we're gonna get this thing dusted out, get it cleaned up, and then we are going to go ahead and move on to the motherboard and see what exactly is going on with that motherboard, because again, in a gaming rig, I have never seen a mining board. So let's go ahead and get this thing cleaned out. Alright, so per usual, I got my old trusty dusty brush here. We're gonna go ahead and just give this thing a quick, good little cleaning right here. Once we do that, we'll go ahead and check out the motherboard and get some details on this thing and see what exactly kind of motherboard it is that we are dealing with. So I am trying to scoop everything into this little hole right here, but seems like most of it is just going into the air. So, makes it a little bit easier. Now, several people have recommended that I wear a mask and gloves. I am wearing a mask right now, but I ain't got no gloves. So that definitely helps. Alright, so this thing is cleaned out pretty good. A little bit of dust floating around in the air. Not a big deal. Honestly, typically whenever I do something like this, I do like to completely strip it down, and I'll actually throw it in my shower or bathtub and just give it a good water down. Of course, I have everything out, but this thing is in such good shape, I do not see that necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and dust off the front real quick, and then we will go ahead and move on to the motherboard. Alright, so we have this thing relatively clean. I'm definitely happy with it, though it wasn't really that dirty in the first place. We're going to go ahead and set this off to the side, and we're going to see what kind of motherboard it is that we're dealing with. Alright, so based off what I found offline, and this looks identical, we are dealing with the Zotac B150 mining ATX motherboard. Has 7X PCIe slots, Has up to 32 gigs of DDR4 2400 megahertz memory or RAM, and does support LGA 1151. It supports 6th gen and 7th gen, i3, i5, i7. So definitely not bad. So I can almost bet that this thing can absolutely do some gaming. So my suspicion is this guy was using this thing for mining and gaming. In my opinion, super smart. Pretty cool. So we're going to go ahead, get this thing taken apart. We're going to pull this cooler off, get some new thermal paste on there, get it back in the case, and then start doing some testing on this thing. Alright folks, so let's go ahead and get this cooler off and see what our thermal paste looks like. Alright, so cooler is ready to come off. Go ahead and just dump these screws out of here on my little mat here. And the thermal paste looks absolutely phenomenal. Looks brand new. Still very goopy. Honestly, probably didn't even need to pull this cooler off. If you guys look here, there is not a single speck of dust. It is absolutely 100% clean. So I'm going to go ahead and say that this is an absolute score. So we're going to go ahead, set this off to the side. We're going to clean this thermal paste off, get some new thermal paste on there, get this thing back together and see what it can and cannot do. Alright, so I just got some toilet paper with a little bit of 91 IPA, and we're just going to go ahead and start pulling some of this off of here. There is absolutely no excess thermal paste off to the side here, so I'm just going to go ahead and leave the CPU in here and move on to the cooler. Yeah, this is definitely fresh thermal paste, you guys. And to be honest with you guys, this cooler looks brand spanking new. It looks like there is zero runtime on this thing. Absolutely incredible. So we'll go ahead and get some thermal paste on here and get this thing back together. Alright, so that definitely looks like a decent amount of thermal paste. Might be a little bit too much, but that's never hurt anything. Let's go ahead and get this cooler back on here. Alright, looks good to me. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing back together. When I come back, this PC will be 100% reassembled. Okay, so before this PC goes back together, I decided to go with an RTX 3070 Ti. I want to fully utilize this CPU and RAM and see what this thing can actually do. This graphics card I've just had been sitting around for quite some time, and it's a damn good card. So I think that this is going to help us 100% utilize this PC and help us see the full potential of this PC. So we're going to go ahead and get this thing installed, get it all back together, and see what kind of games we can run on this thing, everyone. Alright, so before we get into testing, as previously stated, I just want to get rid of these stupid little smudges. These things are so ugly. It is all over this poor thing. Alright, so I'm just going to take a healthy amount of IPA here and just kind of give this thing a bath. This thing seems like it's kind of starting to fall apart. I need a new sponge eventually. Alright, that looks absolutely fantastic. So we are going to go ahead and move on to the front panel here. I'm just going to give this side a quick little rub down again. And that is much, much better. Damn, this thing cleans up nice. I am going to leave these Semperfi stickers on here. I am definitely one to stand by my country. So I'm going to go ahead and grab a dry piece of paper towel and just wipe this off real quick and get rid of these streaks. Alright, that's much, much better. Let's go ahead and hit this front panel real quick, you guys. Alright, that is looking absolutely phenomenal. There's a few little bits and pieces that won't, obviously it's not going to clean up because these are kind of gouges in the front fascia here, but just adds character. So when I come back, we are going to have this thing hooked up, we're going to have some games installed, and we will go ahead and proceed with testing. Alright you guys, so we got this thing all together. She is much cleaner, looking a lot better. So I do have an SSD installed, Samsung Evo SSD. It is 500 gigs. So we're going to go ahead and see if we can't get this thing to power on. Once we see that it does work, I'm going to go ahead and install a bunch of games on here and see what kind of games this thing can run in 2025. You guys ready? Alright, so the fans are spinning up. I have a picture on the screen, and it is loading Windows. Perfect. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and install some games on here, and we will see what this thing can do. Alright folks, so we are in a game called Mon Bazou. I featured this in a couple of my previous videos before. This is one of my favorite games. I absolutely love this game. But it's also a very demanding game. Alright, so we're just going to walk around, see what kind of FPS we're getting. Right now we are just holding right around 60. Looks like we're dipping down a little bit down into our 40s once we get into a demanding environment. I am running medium to high settings right now, and it's not doing half bad. So we are dipping down into the 20s. So we're going to actually go ahead and lower our settings down to medium and see what happens. Ah, much, much better. Alright, so now we are pegged at 60 FPS. Seems to be running okay. It's not bad at all. Definitely playable so far. Seems like the more demanding environment, the more strain it's putting on our CPU. But this is actually running pretty damn good, you guys. So going over to this little house over here that I'm going to is the true test. I have a ton of stuff over here, and this has a tendency to really drag down my systems. So let's see what happens when we go over here. Oh yeah, that is definitely bringing us down. So we're down to 26, 27 FPS. Let's go ahead and lower our settings down just a little bit more. So that brought us up to right around 30. It's not terrible. But as soon as you get away from that environment out there and you get somewhere where I haven't overloaded with all kinds of random stuff, it seems to run perfectly fine. So we'll go ahead and run around and see what kind of performance we can get on Mon Bazou. Alright, so I went ahead and I turned the VSync off, and our FPS is shooting up sky high, almost 130 FPS. Absolutely phenomenal. So this game is definitely running very good. One thing about this game is that you can buy a bunch of like random stuff and you can store it all in, you know, your house or your shed or whatever. The more that you store, the more stress that it's going to put on your system. So it's kind of a given that when we go to that little area over there that was lagging us out before, it's definitely going to bring down the FPS substantially. But when you're just out and you're moving around and doing casual, normal stuff, it runs absolutely great. So it looks like we are peaking right around 130 FPS. So not bad at all. So yeah, I would say so far this is a pretty solid build right here. So I would definitely call this one a win so far. Let's go ahead and move on to our next one. Alright you guys, so we are in Skyrim. Before we actually start testing, I do want to say one thing. I would highly advise against using a 3070 Ti with a 500 watt power supply unit. Typically you would want to use something with maybe 7 to 850 watts to be safe. Just to be safe, I did go ahead and undervolt it a little bit, so we should be good. The power draw on the CPU and the fans and the motherboard should not be too bad given its age, so we should be relatively safe here. So far we are running a solid 60 FPS. It does in fact seem like it's kind of locked to the 60 FPS. I haven't found an option to change that, but we'll go ahead and get some gameplay and see how this does. So far it's running incredibly smooth. No hitches, no lag. Oh, that guy just got his butt kicked. Oh, we're gonna die. Okay, we're not gonna die. So far, this seems to be running absolutely phenomenal. Alright, so even with an intense environment going on, you guys, it is still running absolutely perfect. So our CPU is running at 38C, which is incredibly good. Our GPU utilization is only 41%. VRAM and RAM is at 34 and 39. This is running incredibly good. So I picked this part of the game because it is rather intense. You would definitely think this would utilize a lot of resources off the GPU and CPU and the RAM, but it seems to be handling it just fine. Alright, so we are still pegged at 60 FPS with around 36 to 38C on the CPU. So I'm not entirely sure why the MSI overlay has been giving me so many issues lately. It's not giving me the GPU temps and utilization. But obviously, I mean, the GPU is running at 39%. We should be perfectly fine. So, absolutely incredible. Amazing results, you guys. So, we're going to go ahead and move on to the next game. So, game number 3. We have Gray Zone Warfare. This is all low settings, and so far, we are looking between 40 and 100 FPS. It's very iffy here. I don't know if it's just still loading stuff in, or if this is going to be a terrible gaming experience, but we're gonna have to sit here and find out, and we're gonna see what happens. But so far, it has loaded into the game. It looks totally playable so far. So far I'm seeing between 60 and 100 FPS. Definitely not bad. This is probably going to be the most demanding game on our list. So we're going to go ahead and try and get into a town over here and see if we can't get some gunplay going. So our CPU is still running at a cool 44C. Absolutely incredible how well this thing is running. So once we get into heavier environments with the houses and trees and whatnot, it seems like it likes to dip down, but so far still playable. Alright, so unfortunately it looks like somebody got to this town before I did. That kind of sucks. I wanted to get into a little gunfight over here, but seems like everybody took out all the guys, so is what it is. Obviously it runs the game pretty goddamn good, so damn, I'm really disappointed. I wanted to shoot something. We're gonna go and move on to the next one. So we are now in Valheim, and we are running excellent FPS. We're running between 70 and 90 FPS so far, and that is inside my base, which is gigantic. So we'll go ahead and get some gameplay here and see what happens when we get into some more heavier textures. So it's running super smooth. This is a very pleasant gaming experience. Definitely very playable. So when it comes to this game, this is a relatively newer game. I would say within the past 5 or 6 years. However, it can be demanding at times, so for it to be running this smooth on a CPU this old is pretty freaking impressive. This is one of those things that just goes to show you that you don't need the latest and greatest in order to have a very pleasant gaming experience at 1080p. So even in the woods, we are seeing upwards of nearly 100 FPS, over 100 FPS. Absolutely phenomenal. Let's see if we can't take out one of these guys that's chasing me. Probably not. Oh, no, I died. Let's give it another go, you guys. Alright, so we are back at base. Let's go ahead and we'll run around a little bit more and then we will move on to our next one. Alright, so we are going to go ahead and call this a win. Sorry that it's so uneventful, but obviously I'm not geared for a fight or anything, so we will go ahead and move on to our last game and see how it runs. Alright, you guys, so this is our last game. This is a game which I've also featured in quite a few of my previous videos. This is EVE Online. This game is absolutely gorgeous. It looks so damn good. So we're just going to fly around a little bit, see what it's like. So far, we are running right around 140 FPS. This is max settings. This is everything on high. So typically whenever I test on this game, I like to warp to a sun and see what happens. And look at that, you guys. Isn't that freaking just beautiful? Everything in this game just looks absolutely phenomenal. So we're going to go ahead and warp to a station and see what that looks like as well. Look how big that thing is. Absolutely gigantic. And we are still running in the 120s and 130s range in terms of FPS. This game is so optimized, it will run on pretty much anything. So, not really much of a surprise, to be honest. But damn, it does look good. It never gets old how good this game looks. Alright, so this just goes to show you guys that you do not need to spend thousands of dollars to be able to game. Obviously, you can game on a budget, and total cost of this PC is about $275. And you can run most games with this setup right here. Absolutely phenomenal. Totally impressed. I love this system. With that being said, you guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. Until next time, I will catch you guys in the next one.